The fallout from the Dublin riots has been insane. You'd maybe hope it might be the moment that the establishment prick up their ears and say, our policies don't seem to be very popular. But no, they've doubled down, smearing anyone upset about the stabbing of children as
the far right.
The far right.
Words that are quickly losing any objective meaning. Irish politicians have even smeared the protesters as
terrorist group of people
who should be shot. You'd think Irish politicians would have a better handle on what a terrorist looks like. And left-wing journalists are actually defending the attacker. And there were shocking revelations that the attacker has a history of violence and was issued with a deportation order years ago. But NGOs helped him to stay in the country, and they did this with thousands more people like him. But the real danger? White men. The Irish government is rushing through censorship of social media platforms and harsher hate crime laws to persecute anyone who criticises their policies. And the police were sent to intimidate Conor McGregor over his tweets. But have they picked a fight with the wrong man? And will Irish people stand for all this? Right from the start, the liberal establishment scrambled to set the narrative. You wouldn't know anyone had been stabbed if you took a glance at the headlines. The BBC said, it's not clear what caused the unrest. Yeah, apparently people just spontaneously started rioting for no reason. I mean, it's hardly the greatest investigative journalism I've ever seen. Maybe the BBC could invest in an internet connection to fact-check their own stories. And look at this from the New York Times. The violence in Ireland's capital on Thursday night was fueled by far-right agitators who spread rumours online about an attack on 3 children earlier that day. Yeah, according to the media, the stabbings are just a far-right rumour. The victims must be so relieved. Politicians went further, like this Irish councillor calling the protesters terrorists. Although, when I say Irish, there's an emphasis on the ish.
And we need to do something about it. We cannot continue ignoring that this is a small minority of far-right movement. It is an organised terrorist group of people who want to harm immigrants in this country.
It's a shame she wasn't in Ireland during the Troubles. She might actually know what she's talking about. A Limerick councillor from Bangladesh has said that he would like to see the people involved in the Dublin riots shot in the head or publicly beaten until they're dead. Seems reasonable? The media immediately established that these rioters were all evil, far-right, racist, anti-immigrant thugs and were the only thing to be reported on. And let's have a look at these far-right thugs. And the names of some of those arrested. Abdul Wahab Salawi, that classic white Irish anti-immigrant name. Can I just say how wonderful it is that the anti-immigrant racist community is so diverse and welcoming of immigrants and people of other races. That is a real sign of progress. Or maybe the looting was just opportunistic scroats and had nothing to do with the protests, which were driven by public anger at the government's failure to deal with a huge influx of unvetted male migrants, many from violent, intolerant cultures that have led to a string of attacks and murders across Ireland, such as the homophobic murders of gay men in Sligo. The liberal condemnation of the Dublin protests was definitely at odds with the kid gloves treatment of BLM riots, which were described as mostly peaceful, which is a bit like calling Jimmy Savile mostly good at babysitting. Look at this average NPC. I saw some white folk on Facebook criticising the ongoing riots in the US relating to the murder of George Floyd by police, saying they should be peaceful. Yes, in an ideal world, but in an ideal world a racist police force wouldn't murder unarmed black people with alarming frequency. Let's see what he said about the Dublin riots. Absolutely feral animals who don't give a single about the victims, just looking for any excuse to loot and burn. Even though nobody was seriously hurt during the Dublin riots, but dozens of people were killed during the BLM riots. And personally, I'm a bit angrier about innocent kids getting stabbed than some fentanyl-soaked crook. But hey, I'm weird that way. Hysterical leftists tried to outdo each other in their overblown denunciations of Dublin's riots, like it was a cross between 9/11, Harambe getting shot, and that woman who put the cat in the bin. I lived through the Syrian war, but now I feel unsafe in Dublin. I mean, it sounds like you need to work on your feelings. Many Irish people feel unsafe because of the stabbing attack. Why aren't they allowed to write newspaper pieces about their feelings? And the responses were dripping with fear and loathing for white Irish people. I'll tell you what I'm scared of in Dublin right now, and that's white Irish men. White Irish men are the biggest danger for Irish women and children. I am far more afraid of young white Irish men than I am of any immigrant. White Irish men, white Irish men. You'd be arrested under hate crime laws if you said this about any other ethnicity. Someone wrote, Irish lives matter on a wall, and this was condemned as the most racist thing to ever happen anywhere, ever. The BBC gave column space to a Trotskyist organisation, balanced, called People Not Profit, who said that there's no place in our society for this kind of racist poison. We are under no illusions that Irish Lives Matter is a racist slogan which is directly counterpoised to movements against the oppression faced by black people and other ethnic minorities, they said. I mean, it seems a bit unfair. If we're going to have the oppression Olympics, Ireland is definitely in with a shot at gold. And this is what they teach kids during Black History Month. A riot is the language of the unheard. Also, imagine calling a communist organisation People Not Profit instead of Gulags Not Dinner. It's all a bit different from the years of British occupation when socialists joined in the chants of Ireland for the Irish. While the white people bad message is relentlessly pushed, the public rehabilitation of the Algerian attacker is already beginning. Here's Irish journalist Joe Brawley describing him as a gentleman.
One of the most extraordinary things was that whenever the gentleman who had attacked the children and the classroom assistant, who was badly slashed herself, he was intercepted, and whenever he'd been sort of incapacitated, 3 women took it upon themselves to protect him and probably save his life, because there was great anger at that stage.
Joe's tried to look cool by dyeing his hair, but he's at the age where it doesn't make him look non-binary. It just makes him look like he asked the hairdresser for a blue rinse. He's really working hard to redefine the meaning of the word gentle there. Why is the left like this? I swear to God the attacker will be reviewing kitchen knives in The Guardian by the end of the week. And everyone was at pains to stress how immigrants are all software engineers and neurosurgeons. Yeah, the Algerian guy wasn't stabbing people in the head, he was performing speed neurosurgery. And the Irish need migrants to wipe their arses apparently.
So basically we need migrant labour. We need them to do the work that Irish people do not want to do, particularly to look after our quote-unquote old people. Wipe their arses, wash them, etc.
How did Irish people wipe their arses prior to neoliberal globalism? I wonder if leftists would be deflecting the blame onto another ethnicity if the stabbing had been by a white Christian. After Raoul Moat went on a rampage, where were the leftists posting, "I'll tell you what terrifies me right now, Polynesian hill tribes"? And let's look at the stats. Algerians are overrepresented as perpetrators of crime across Western Europe. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that all North African migrants are bad. There are obviously a lot in Europe just looking for a better life, working hard and integrating. And people will say that the imbalance in crime is due to socio-economic issues. But the murders in Sligo, stabbings across Europe, motivated by socio-economic issues? The guy in Sligo wasn't targeting gay people in protest at the minimum wage. Some antipathies go deeper than that. Although Irish people aren't white anyway, according to author E. Michael Jones, who says that any Irishman who thinks he's white is a victim of identity theft. Read Noel Ignatieff, How the Irish Became White. Man, I don't need to read some weird book to see that Irish people are so white they're almost translucent. I just need to look at my wife. And the establishment clung on to the fact that one of the men who helped stop the attack was Brazilian, like it was the last life jacket on the Titanic. A Brazilian immigrant saved the day, so yay, immigration is great. Although some people might say that an optimum situation is no stabbing in the first place, rather than having different migrants fight it out on Dublin's pavements. And apparently 3 men intervened, and according to witnesses, the first man on the scene was Irish and another was French. But while the Brazilian guy was paraded across the media, the Irish guy was sidelined, with police warning him that public comments could jeopardise the case. And other white people in the vicinity were probably scared of being arrested for racist hate crime if they stopped the stabbing. Meanwhile, the Brazilian guy's GoFundMe is currently greater than the GDP of Brazil. Weirdly, leftists tried to make out that the Irish hate the Brazilian guy, which they don't. Everyone sees the Brazilian guy as a hero. Brazil is a Catholic country, of course, and Brazilians tend to integrate well in the West. Still, it's weird to see the establishment pushing the narrative that diversity is our strength at all costs. Although, not diversity of opinion, of course, everyone must think that border control is evil. Most shocking were the revelations about the attacker, who was reported as having a history of violence. He was arrested on a knife crime charge earlier this year, but released. And all the leftists bleating that, ooh, he's been in Ireland for 20 years, he's an Irish citizen. Well, the Sunday Times revealed that he was issued with a deportation order in 2003 and fought it with the help of NGOs and eventually received an Irish passport. The police are now rowing back on these claims, and it looks as though, at the moment, just as I'm recording this, that the police actually fed false information to the press to try and trip them up and make it look as if they were spreading lies. But we'll see where the truth lies over the next few days. But this is a recurring theme. NGOs, or non-governmental organisations, are activist groups that subvert democracy by influencing politicians. They convince politicians that open borders is great, and they help illegal migrants enter Europe. NGOs literally run boats back and forth ferrying men from North Africa, and once they're here, NGOs and human rights lawyers coach the migrants in how to lie to gain asylum in the West, for example by pretending to be gay or pretending to be Christian so they can't be sent back to a country where gays or Christians are oppressed. This is how Mohammed al-Swalmin managed to stay in Britain before he committed the horrific attempted suicide bombing at the maternity hospital. NGOs are supposedly humanitarian, but they don't care about all humans. Any humans who question them are smeared as far-right racist bigots. And NGOs are very successful. The majority of Irish deportation orders are never carried out. In 2017, for example, there were 930 deportation orders signed, but only 140, or 15% of them, were actually effected. Without the threat of deportation to dissuade them, there's no incentive for illegal migrants not to come to Ireland. And sadly, these people are displacing genuine refugees. And who funds these NGOs and what's their agenda? Why do they have the ear of the government but voters don't? There are lots of them, so many that a UN delegate joked about how everyone in Ireland seems to be in an NGO.
In your country, is each person member of an NGO? Because given the large number of representatives who have come just on the subject of racial discrimination, it seems to me that there must be a lot of NGOs, and I'm convinced that that must be the case.
I'm pretty sure that if I helped a criminal to stay in the country and evade the authorities, I'd get in trouble. Why aren't NGOs facing prosecution when someone they helped to evade the law and stay in the country then commits a crime? NGOs have a dangerous influence on politicians. They paint themselves as experts and mainstream voices, but in reality they're fringe lunatics, overthinking posh activists. Our politicians are being led by the young ones. Terrible policies such as Scotland's gender recognition bill that allow male rapists to go to women's prisons are championed by NGOs. NGOs also push censorship and hate speech laws, which governments love because it gives them a weapon to silence and punish their enemies. Following the stabbing of children, the Irish government sprang into action to clamp down on criticism of children being stabbed. Leo Varadkar, the Irish Taoiseach or Prime Minister, promised to rush through new hate crime laws to make better use of CCTV footage from the riots.
I promise we will use the full resources of the law, the full machinery of the state, to punish those involved in yesterday's grotesque events. And will put in place measures to ensure that any repeat attempts will meet the full measure of the law. We will pass new laws in the coming weeks to enable the Gardaí to make better use of the CCTV evidence they collected yesterday. And also we will modernise our laws against incitement to hatred and hatred in general. And that is more required than ever was the case before. And we will do that in weeks as well. To all those cowardly champions of Ireland who took to the streets of Dublin last night, let me say one thing. Ask your sisters, ask your friends, ask everyone you know what they fear most on our streets. They're afraid of you, afraid of your anger and your rage, afraid of your violence, your hate, and how you blame others for your problems. As a government, we will be relentless in protecting our citizens and defending our people.
Applying new laws retroactively would be an insane move and violate the Irish Constitution. You can't change the law to prosecute people for previously lawful behaviour. Ireland is already set to pass some of the strictest hate speech laws this side of North Korea, but like all evils brought upon citizens by the state, it's for their own good.
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good.
Yeah, restricting freedom for the common good, just like they did in the Soviet Union. And the Irish government has already instructed telecommunications providers that they must keep records going back 12 months, which I'm pretty sure is a breach of European legislation. It's definitely too nosy. The wording of the Irish hate crime bill is terrifyingly vague and would literally make it a crime to have memes on your phone. It'll criminalise anyone who possesses material that is likely to incite violence or hatred against a person or group of persons with a view to the material being communicated to the public or a section of the public, whether by himself or herself or another person. Such characteristics are set to include race, colour, nationality, descent, religion, ethnic or national origin, gender, including gender expression or identity, sexual orientation or disability, and they don't actually specify what hate actually is. Lefties will say, "Oh, but Leo, they won't arrest everyone for having memes on their phone. That would be unworkable." Because that's what lefties sound like in my head. Well, they won't arrest everyone. This will just be targeted against anyone who speaks out against the state. Like Conor McGregor, who is a rare example of a Western man who hasn't yet been completely demoralised and broken, and who is currently under investigation by the Irish police over his social media posts. It's like something Putin would do, except Putin is a bit more subtle when he persecutes much loved public figures. One of the protected groups that cannot be criticised under the hate speech law is national origin. So the very idea of Irish identity will be a crime, and criticising open borders will also be illegal. The government is also going to censor social media to prevent the spread of dissent, just like they do in China. Hazel Chu, former mayor of Dublin, appeared on the radio to say that the government needs to examine the possibility of silencing social media due to Elon Musk criticising the Irish government. They say it's to limit the spread of misinformation, but the riots show that social media gives a much more accurate account of what happened than the controlled mainstream media does. This is a desperate establishment scrambling to keep control, like Middle Eastern governments did during the Arab Spring. Under Ireland's hate crime laws, if foreign nationals stab children, you'll have to love it or go to jail. The message from the establishment is that being opposed to children being stabbed is far right. I'm not sure that this is going to put people off being far right. I can understand the establishment trying to suppress this though. The American Revolution started with conversations in pubs and leaflets being passed around. This situation in Ireland has been brewing for a while, with unsustainably high levels of immigration and apparently no vetting, allowing criminals and hateful ideologies into the country. As well as the homophobic executions in Sligo, there's been a steady drip of attacks, such as this migrant who broke into a post office armed with a knife and shouted Allah Akbar. Citizens present at the scene managed to stop him, but nobody condemns the hateful ideologies that drive these attacks. And according to a poll in May 2023, 75% of Irish feel that the country is taking in too many asylum seekers, and 76% stated that they understood the growing anger towards them. In general, the Irish and Europeans are not opposed to controlled immigration, most of which comes from within Europe itself, but they are angry at the explosion, no pun intended, of non-EU men gaming the asylum system to get into their country. And they've been protesting for months. But as one Irish mother said, when we do things peacefully, we get ignored.
We've been screaming this for months and months. This is coming. They knew it was coming. You know, you had your woman out of the Dáil walking around here with 4 coppers. Dublin is safe. Walk through Dublin on your own at 11 o'clock at night and tell me how safe it is.
Stevie Wonder can see that what needs to happen. Do you know what I mean? What change needs to be taken. So yeah, that's basically... And I'm disgusted that we'll have to burn our own streets now, but it's come to this.
So what's going to happen? Irish politicians aren't doing what the public want, they're doing what NGOs and economists say is the right thing to do. Instead of listening to the voters, as you might expect a democracy to do, the Irish government are instead going to impose strict controls on the internet to stifle dissent, and they're going to criminalise any dissenters, just like governments did during the Arab Spring. Will it work? I doubt it. Ireland was never a coloniser or an enslaver. Ireland was colonised. Irish people aren't burdened with the same guilt that has cucked Brits into quietly accepting the kebab shop gangbanging of their children. Even with social media restricted and citizens threatened with jail, word of mouth will spread. It was word of mouth that ended Catholicism's grip on Irish society. It'll be the same with these officious woke politicians who hate Irish citizens. And unlike Arab countries, Irish voters can vote out governments. The only problem is, all political parties are pretty much aligned now. Ireland needs an outsider to enact the will of the people. Someone like Javier Milei in Argentina. That person is Conor McGregor. He just needs to take a lot more punches to the head so he can be sufficiently neurologically impaired to fit into politics. Listen, Weirder things have happened. Thanks for watching. Please share this video with an Irish politician. And also, if you want to see me perform live, I'm doing a special Christmas show with the bad boys of comedy, the absolute mad lad Count Dankula, and the bad lad of global jihad Darius Davies on December the 15th in London. It'll be an insane show. The venue's yet to be announced to stop Wet Wipes getting it cancelled, but it's central. The link's below. And if you want to support me making these videos and see more unfiltered content, then sign up to my Patreon. There's a link below. Anyway, thanks for watching. I've been Leo Kerr. Bye. Bye bye.